entertain a motion to open the meetings.
So be it.
Second.
And move to second, all in favor? Okay, first thing, we have no old business. So we're starting with new business, and it's Gary Moore, the Senior Resource Chair, Committee Chair. Uh-oh, here it comes with paperwork.
It's a picture. Picture.
Good, good.
I didn't want to stretch anybody.
Good. Good. Watch out for this. Watch out for that card.
Yes, please.
Thank you. So, that committee has met twice, or three times, I guess it is. Our last meeting, we talked about becoming a member of the ARP network of age-friendly communities.
He's looking for the- Hang on for just a sec.
You didn't do the sign.
Is there one that handing up on them too? Is there one?
Carry on, we're ready for you.
Thank you. Becoming a member of the ARP network of age-friendly communities, and what that means is we fill out a form, send it in, and we become a network of about, I think, 400 or 500 different communities that have done this. And generally what it does for us, it puts us in contact with these other communities, but also gives us a little bit of an edge when it comes to putting in for an ARP grant, which we'd like to do next year. But before we did this, we thought the select board ought to kind of understand what it is we're doing. There's no obligation on the part of the town to do anything at that point. The committee may have some obligations, but they're not big. Everything that you need to know about it is online. You can look it up. I can read it for you if you'd like, but it's not terribly deep. But we do want access to that money. Reed Field got $8,000 last year, and we'd like to put in for a grant next year. This is an annual grant. They start in January, February, and they end in November. So we missed this last year, but we don't want to miss next year. But we also didn't want to put in to become a member unless you guys knew about it and see if there are any objections to our doing that. Questions? Objections? Then we're going to do it.
Good luck. Are there strings with it?
There are no strings to it. As a matter of fact, if you become a member and you don't do anything, you just don't do anything. While I'm at it, I'll tell you what the rest of the graphic that I gave you talks about. We're going to put out a survey in January, February to the town, hopefully to those 65 and older folks. That survey is also part of the ARP deal. We need the survey in order to delineate those areas that we want to put in for a grant. The next line down over is this trifold info sheet. What we're doing is developing an info sheet that we're going to put it in the town office, in the medical center, in businesses, in the library, in the Center for All Seasons. And what that will do is we'll list resources for older people, like neighbors driving neighbors, neighbors helping neighbors. One that we were going to develop was neighbors or morning calls, and we find out that a lot of these things are done. The neighbors driving neighbors has been accomplished. Started over in Mount Vernon and has spread through 5 towns, I think. The morning calls, we were going to develop that ourselves. However, Catholic Charities already has a system in place. And so what we're going to do is where those exist, we're going to use those. But they'll be on this trifold. You'll be able to look down and see medical resources, transportation resources, all kinds of resources. And we're going to have them available throughout the town. We talked I think your last meeting about a senior center. That's probably a mid-range plan, and you can see the steps we're going to go through to get that done. And finally, senior housing, assisted living housing actually is what that is. That's a long-range plan, and I'm not even sure that I'll be around to see that, but some people will. So that's kind of what we're doing. And I guess what we would probably appreciate, if the board deems it appropriate, is a little bit of help in printing and postage. So I come with my handout for that only, printing and postage sustenance. That's it.
No,
So
Yeah.
that was gonna be one of my questions, was how the survey would be conducted.
It'll be online and in paper, because you kind of have to do it that way. You don't have a choice.
So if we do a mailing, are we paying for return or?
No, you pay one way. And you won't have to pay for the online, because I intend to do that myself.
Now, would it make sense to have drop boxes for the surveys at, like, the town, at area businesses
We could
where
do
we
that,
would have the
yes.
trifold?
Yep.
Have a drop box so
We
people
could do
can
that.
return the surveys, it may be an easy way for
Yep.
folks to bring it in.
Yes,
How much-
Barry.
How much money do you need?
If you gave us 500, we'd be ecstatic.
How much you just be ordinarily happy?
500, we'd be ordinarily happy too. Now, we can fund this without the town. I'll tell you right now, we would rather have the town involved in it, but
4952.
we can get it funded.
Now, would you be looking for us to put this forward for next year's
No,
town budget?
No.
Or looking to find $500 in this year's budget?
this year.
And that would go towards what exactly?
Copies and funding. Our copies and postage, that's it. Those are the only two expenses we're gonna have.
Dennis, do we have $500 somewhere we could give them?
Or is it feasible that if it's an extension of something that
We
the
can
town's
probably
going to
bring
be
it under
able
admin.
to?
Bring them in what?
Probably, I'll have to look at the admin budget. I didn't realize the request was gonna be made right along.
That's not a problem.
Yeah, so we think we probably can accommodate it.
If you don't wanna make.
Certainly the printing, it won't be color.
No,
And so certainly the printing and probably the postage.
Well, I mean, my question is it possible for us to copy it here using what we already have? Would there be maneuverability in the admin budget for postage?
That's what we're doing.
And
I think so, but
to-
I'll
to-
have to-
what your quantity is gonna be.
I'll have to ask the question of Melanie, but I'm
there are
pretty sure.
365 plusers in the area.
so,
However, in order to do a mail out, I think you've gotta go wider than that, so. And I'm not sure how we would, bear down on these 65 plusers.
so you're saying you'll do the print off in the office here,
Printing in the office.
Jack?
So Gary, will this group be in the future a nonprofit group, or will it remain a function of the town?
We haven't got that far, Jack.
Okay.
To me,
If fundraising is an issue, that's a
Yeah.
fundamental consideration.
If I could
yeah.
try to help with that question. It's an ad hoc group looking into all of these different issues that seniors may need, resources, ideas, things that currently are being done, how we can do them better, things that aren't being done, how we can do them. At some point in time, the committee will have a report. Of course, they're going to be doing things all along. They'll have a report making recommendations. They may vary, and it depends on the committee makeup. They may very well decide to form a 501c3 nonprofit to take care of this, but none of that's been decided. But that may be the progression. So right now, it's an ad hoc committee appointed by the board to essentially investigate these issues, try to do better at what we are doing, make recommendations on how we can do what we aren't doing, and things like that. So
Thank you.
So, does somebody wanna make a motion that,
500?
yeah, 500?
I'll move that we provide $500 to the committee for postage and copy.
I hear a second. Moved and seconded. Is there any more discussion on this? And
Well,
we do have a place for the money, we believe.
yeah, I think that we can put it under the admin budget.
Okay, you wanna add that?
well, I mean, do we have like a general amount of copies that the town
Yeah, we have, like,
generates per year? So that's
$500,000
what I'm trying to think, like,
plus,
do
yeah.
we say $500 or do we say 500 copies and postage for.
I think the postage is the bigger issue,
It is the bigger
and
issue.
the copies aren't gonna cost that much. It's just running through the system, you know, you don't, I forget how much we pay a copy, but it isn't very much. So I don't think that'll be an issue.
Okay,
It'll be the postage is primarily what that money.
Yep.
I think we owe this to the seniors in this town, we tax them pretty hard,
You do.
so.
I've noticed that.
You know what you mean.
Judge noticed that too.
Yes, indeed.
All right, any more questions? Seeing none, I'd entertain a vote. All in favor? 5. Thank you.
I thank you guys
Thank you, Gary.
and girls.
Thank you for your work.
More than welcome.
Good luck with it.
Thank you.
You still thinking of the Old Town office?
It's still there. So you guys continue to sleep on that. The Historical Society is also interested in the town office. So that you have 2 interested organizations.
I hadn't heard that one.
It is interested, they are interested.
Well, it's available,
Okay,
$90,000.
It's, just sleep on it.
let's move on to the next item.
Okay.
We have a letter to support the Crossroads landfill knowledge walk.
Yes.
Think I'll let Denny take that.
Right, we received a request from Norwalk landfill that we take our material to. They're looking for an expansion, they wanted a letter of support from towns that are currently using the landfill to the DEP to support that expansion effort. So, I've written and drafted a letter which you have access to there. I think there was a summary of the whole issue. And so the question is, do you want to send that letter of support or not? We do use the facility. It is one of the cheaper alternatives to disposal of our municipal waste. So it makes sense that we would support it, but that's not a decision we can make.
What is, okay,
I'll move that we show our support to the organization, and that if this letter is acceptable to the board, we send this letter.
I'll second that.
been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on this?
Letter look good to me.
Does anybody know how Norwalk feels about it?
See anything?
Well, I think they support it, they get a lot of their taxes from it. I haven't asked for it.
I assume they do, yes. Just curious.
Anybody got any questions or anything? Seeing none, I'd entertain a vote. All in favor?
And that's authorizing me to sign.
Yes.
That's what this letter.
Been moved and 5. Thank you. The next thing we have on there is security cameras at the transfer station.
Yes, I talked to you once before about the moving forward on this. At that time, you were supportive. I went out and got a quote, the quote's here, and I'd like to move forward on getting those installed before the end of the year. There is money in the budget. They had intended to do something. There was a major repair that was going on with the skid steers, I understand it, and that repair, some alternative came up, I don't know. And so there, as I understand it, there's money in that budget.
I did ask the question if this was gonna be one that he could view it at any time, and the answer was yes.
And
He wanted to pick it up on his phone and
I can do that now
see what was
with
going on.
the center as well as here. I can do it on my phone. And that would be just another.
So have we gone, I mean, can catch me up from when I was on the board last and where we're at now, because when I was on the board last, we spent a lot of money putting security cameras at the transfer station. And they needed to be wired in, and they needed to be wired in for certain reasons. And is it that we're now looking to do this overhaul because the wiring in of these was not?
The cameras are breaking down, the system, it works, but there's a couple cameras that are broke. It doesn't allow remote access. It's really not usable for the purposes I'd like to use it. That was a Sam's Club purchase, and it's really an old system. I think it was purchased in 2009 or 10. And it was right after I left that they put that in. It was a good idea at the time, because at that time there were concerns about people coming onto the site and all of that. And that's the primary purpose.
Still in a copper,
Yeah.
yeah, wasn't the garbage.
Yeah, so that was that purpose. This will allow for that as well as direct observations. I get complaints about the facility now and then. Sometimes I'll run up, check things out. Sometimes it's good just to be able to pull this up to see if I can observe something that has been.
And how many people would have access to the
Gary,
wireless?
it would be me, Gary's boss's replacement, and Kenny.
Ken?
Yep.
Number one, 4172, that's for the, just for the equipment, and then there's a monthly fee.
There's a monthly fee for both it's right here.
I just wanna make sure I understand it.
Yeah, there is a monthly fee,
Yeah, so yeah, we have.
just like we pay
three-
for these.
Three plans, we pick a plan and then,
Right.
all right, but 41, by the way, we don't pay tax, 120.
Well, I know, this is a quote that we
Yeah,
won't go back.
okay, just didn't think you'd miss that, but
No,
just in case.
okay.
So $44,000 plus,
Yeah, plus.
and then a monthly fee. We have to decide, can we change the fee if we decide to go, say, with the bronze, and then we find we should have gone gold?
I haven't asked that question, I can ask the question, but
So, and I guess there's a part of me that says, why can't we simply put up wireless cameras that we can access? Why do we need to pay a monthly fee to anyone? Are they going to,
This also
what's
includes
the
maintenance.
warranty that they're
yeah,
giving us?
this is maintenance and.
This is maintenance and everything. And the annual fee, forgive me for saying, but the annual fee of $359.40 is not terribly expensive.
Yeah, and it is for maintenance and all that, and these other systems that had been put up, Center for All Seasons completely went down. We didn't have one up around here. And, you know, I've talked to different towns, and essentially you have them all under one group. You get the benefit of them knowing your system, their maintenance, all of that. I mean, we could probably have someone put in whatever, but then it's a different setup. This is a professional setup. It's managed professionally. It's not, what do you call it, wired?
Right. We use these guys for our security system,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
So,
There are glitches, that happen periodically, particularly in rough weather and stuff like that. But for the most part, it's been very reliable,
Yeah.
and they have been extremely attentive to repairs and maintenance, and if there are glitches and stuff like that. So
we've used them here.
Oh yeah, we're using it for the system we got here and the system we got at the Center for All Seasons now.
Yeah,
They
they
put that in.
And
it
then,
was main
and
security.
then are they giving us a multi-facility discount in this price? Should we ask them for a
I can ask
multi-facility
them, but
discount?
I can ask them. They know that they have our three accounts. I can ask them if this is a part of it. I just asked for a quote on that system up there.
Well, and I also, what is, in 3 years, are these gonna be obsolete and then we're replacing the whole system again?
No.
Or are we looking at
No, the things that you can-
upgrading things as,
Well, it's technology or
as
things.
technology
Yeah.
changes, you'll
But
agree.
we could be putting, like, at some point in time, as I understand it, we've got a system here with 5 cameras, but we have 8 slots. I did not put any cameras on the back, right? Because people weren't using it, but I understand that the board has authorized that area as a recreational area, right? So at some point in time, when people start to recreate out there, we may want to put a camera on back. And that's just the price of the camera, you just fit it in. So it allows a lot of flexibility. They have these cameras, which we don't have in here, but they're actually, you can remotely telescope it to really get close up or not. So
Well,
the
let's see
meeting
what
is
they're
down at the
saying.
Center for All Seasons.
Okay, is that right in Belgrade Lakes?
If you go
Yes.
down 5 miles or 4 miles on your right, you'll see a big sign that says Center for All Seasons,
Center for
Community
All-
Center. Yeah, sorry,
Okay, thank
sorry.
you.
There's a thing on the door there,
Um,
sorry.
well, I guess the other part of me says, if we are using Seco Security and they're providing security for multiple buildings,
Yep.
then is it possible for us to bundle this as one big package if they're then
I
going to be
will
responsible
check
for
with
multiple
that, I'll check with
facilities.
that, hopefully that'll work.
Because I wouldn't want for us to be paying, picking this service plan for here and this one for here and this one for here. What do we have here?
Yeah.
And what do we have at the Center for All Seasons, and why would we not try to tie?
We'll try to
if
tie
we're gonna use
that
it
in.
for another one,
Yeah,
it
we'll try
makes
to-
more
we'll
sense
tie
for
it
us
in,
to
yeah,
tie them in to one.
I'll tell you the truth, my assumption, and it's probably a bad assumption, I do that once in a while, was that they are our security provider, they should provide all of our alarms and all of that. And my assumption was that these prices were coming we were getting a reduced price on these. I never asked the question, so I can't say.
Well,
that.
and and I'm
So it's a good
just
question,
wondering,
it's
do we
something
look
I
at
didn't
for
ask.
like a bundle package
Yeah.
from them,
We
Just to
can
make
ask-
sure we're getting the most bang for our buck.
Yeah, certainly. I
Well,
appreciate it.
We can approve the cost for the
Yeah,
equipment,
because only.
and then leave the question of the plan
Yeah.
till the next meeting when you.
And if they give us a bundle price, it just drops the
Well,
price.
do we have to approve this today, or cameras?
Well, it's not an emergency, I'd like to be able to get it in before the winter, but it's not an
Yeah.
emergency.
But if we held off until the next meeting and reach out to them.
If that's what you wanna do, that's fine.
What's the problem with doing it today?
Well, I'm just wondering if they, if they look at the whole package differently, if they're providing security and maintenance on multiple facilities, then do they come back to the town and say, for 3 facilities, this is your total package cost for 25 cameras, this amount of monitoring?
What I'm suggesting is the equipment, we can go ahead and approve it. He doesn't have to go and tell us to approve it, unless it's to his advantage when he's negotiating with it. But he, at least Dennis will know what he's authorized to do,
You can approve up to.
up to,
Up to, yeah.
and then you know when you negotiate. if you- you know,
My sense is that if they offer a bundle package, if this is not part of a bundle package.
Take out the tax.
I don't know, but if it isn't, then they'll offer a lower price, that's what my sense is. That's why I'm hearing you say it, I think it's a good question.
And then we'd wanna take this total and take the tax out.
Of course, the taxes we don't pay.
I make the motion, we approve this up to this amount, and
Well, do we wanna take the 4172, Ernie, and
that's,
take
yeah,
up the
I
129?
mean, that's up to that amount, but I mean, with the assumption that the taxes are taken out, and then potentially if there are any savings from bundling, just from my own experience, I have 7 different systems down on the properties that I manage, and if we were adding additional services to one of those properties, we would get a break on that particular system. But if we're adding services to this property and services to that property, each property is separately billed. It's worth asking, but I'm not sure. I don't use Seacoast, but potentially they would. Maybe they would give us a little more of a break, but it's worth asking.
No, it's worth asking.
Yeah.
So let's,
What do we do at the North Belgrade Community Center?
There's nothing there yet,
Okay.
I thought there was for the freezers,
not that I'm aware of.
there's something there.
Well, then it's not something I'm aware of. I'll ask Gary that tomorrow.
I'm almost sure.
It's
there's
not, see,
something-
so they have,
Something set
hold
up.
on, there are alarms, but they're not cameras.
Oh.
We have the security password, all of that,
Yeah.
Right.
but there's no
Okay.
cameras.
No cameras there, yeah.
Right.
But it's still the same company.
It's the same company, yes.
Yeah, you probably get a notice that the power goes out for the,
Yeah, we get all of that stuff, so, I mean, there is no camera though.
Yeah.
Right. And to get cameras up there, you have to buy either the 8 slot or the 4 slot, If you buy the 4 slot, you're limited.
Yeah.
All right,
Well, should we buy 30 cameras and then we put however many we need in
You
each
need,
facility? Or do you have,
you need a certain type of, they make it in modules. I mean, not modules, but different sizes. You can get 4 cameras, you can get 8 cameras. If you get,
4,000.
so 8 cameras, you can put 5, 6, or 7 on those 8 cameras or 8.
Yeah.
You don't have to include them, but if you don't, then you gotta buy another module, and the modules are
Sure.
all right. The amount of money without the tax is $4,042.20. So is that what you guys wanna
Sure,
up to?
yes.
Thank you. Do I hear a second on that? Been moved and seconded, any more discussion?
one question I had was, I assume that these can be like just background, like, let's say there's an event at the transfer station, you could back up and see that from a previous day or.
Oh, yeah, it's a monitor you can back up.
Yeah.
It depends on the size of your drive.
Sure.
Right. We've actually used it on an issue recently, and you can view things, so you can clip it, you can take photographs of a single picture, you can.
Use one camera.
Well, that's only if you do Plan B, because it looks like with the NVR, DVR video storage and recording.
Well, that's what I've asked for, so they probably provided more information than they needed to.
Any more questions?
No.
Seeing none. All in favor? 5, thank you. Bill?
After you voted, I wondered, maybe at a later date, we might wanna consider a security camera at some of the fire stations.
That's been talked about, but.
Put it in your budget, bring it to us. Yeah,
No, I was just wondering if you had talked about it.
I think it has been.
You know, and realistically, if we're gonna ask them for a package price, we say, this is what you're doing for us now. This is ideally what our plan is for the future.
No, we haven't talked.
What's the best deal that you can give the town of
The
Milton?
budget, in the budget, yes. So I think your answer is yes, Bill. I think it has been in the budget. Maybe we'll find out probably shortly when the budget comes to us.
I was just thinking Lake Station is, everybody under RAP has a access code for it.
Yep.
We have changed the code for the office, but,
All right, we're ready to move on. Next thing is the Belgrade Rome Joint Study Committee to investigate the merger.
Yes. As you remember, I came in and asked you whether or not you'd be interested in having me go talk to Rome to see whether or not they'd be interested in establishing a study group. Looking at, not merging perhaps, but all kinds of alternatives to the current way we're working together to provide services. Yeah. So I did go to Rome. And they said, yes, draft up an agreement. And so we did. I've had Dan and Gary Foss and Rome have reviewed that. In fact, I sent it out in draft form, and I didn't get a chance to bring it. I wanted to bring it to you to see if you agreed with this study committee. It basically requires them to report out in a year. It allows for a certain number of people to be on the committee, and the fire department co-chairs, the chiefs, would be co-chairs and select the members of the committee that they need. There may be a request for us to provide some administrative support, but that hasn't been made, so that would authorize some administrative support. So that's the agreement right there. I have a final copy, as I understand it. Richard LaBelle jumped the gun last night and had it approved at his board meeting. But anyhow, that's what this is intended to do, is to look into how we could work together, looking at the fact that we're losing volunteers. We aren't getting the number of volunteers we need. And they're looking down the road at possibly hiring full-time fire people. So this whole thing is looking toward the future to see what we can do, providing better services. We know that Rome knows it's not going to cost them less, because that clearly went down. So anyhow, that's the agreement. If you approve the agreement, I'll finalize a copy. Well, I've got a final copy that you can sign, Richard, and I'll get Richard to sign.
That's better.
Yeah,
This needs a date in it, right?
Yeah, I put the date in it's October 1st is the date they agreed upon.
Okay.
When I say they, it's the fire departments.
now administrative support, are we gonna be looking at paying someone to take the meeting minutes?
Well, I had anticipated paying someone. They were going to appoint someone perhaps from the town. I could go up if they wanted, or they could appoint someone from their, in other words, it would be administrative support that they could have. Each town is expected to appoint, not necessarily to pay for. I wouldn't see it being paid for. That was a question that Richard LaBelle asked.
Go ahead.
Question for Bill, do you here represent the fire department on this? No, you have nothing to do with it. Yeah. Is anybody, I'd kind of like to ask the fire chief what he thinks of this whole idea.
Well, he's the one that brought it to me to move forward.
Yeah, they think it's a great idea.
They do.
They do, both of them, both Gary and
I don't care about Gary.
Dan.
Dan's,
Yeah.
should say I don't care about him. I mean,
And I talked to them today about the date too,
Yeah.
because that was the one thing I left out when they reviewed it.
and they feel that the town will be better protected than it is now.
They don't know what's gonna come out of the study,
Yeah.
all right, because that's preempting the outcome.
This is just
But
a
they
study.
believe
That's
that
just a,
we have to do something between Rome and Belgrade, given the current status of both volunteerisms and Rome's kind of support that we're providing them that maybe they should be paying more for, all of that.
they went through it again today.
Say again,
Belgrade went through it again today.
they did,
Yes.
and they're in favor, all right.
Well, no, they went on call.
Oh, if we
In
put
fact,
this
it's
in effect,
going
I
on
get it.
right now.
Yeah,
Jack?
it's just a question that comes to mind because ultimately it will come up in this process if it goes forward. How is the budget for fire and rescue going to be set under this arrangement? Is it going to be a common budget that has a method of splitting between the two towns, or is the two towns going to be independently responsible for their budget? I don't expect an answer here today, but it's something that ought to be addressed pretty early in the process.
Yes, all of that is up for discussion under this committee. They recognize that you can form a fire district. That's one of the possibilities. Rome and Belgrade might form a fire district. You have a fire district chief. The chief really kind of organized between the two volunteer fire departments a budget for the two towns, and the towns get a portion the way, whatever way they come up with. So all of those things are possible, and those things will be worked out before anything. And ultimately, I believe, certainly has to come before the board. I would assume that it would have to go before the town. So all of that's going to be explained and all of that.
We did this a few years ago, back when I was fire chief. We covered Rome for 10 years, as far as rescue. And at the end of 10 years, we went up and told them they had to get on their own, and they did, but they didn't pay us much money either.
Yeah, my sense is that we're subsidizing Rome right now. Now, I don't know how much, but we're subsidizing some of their fire and rescue services. And I think the fire chief understands that, and I think this is part of how we can work together to resolve that issue in a mutually beneficial way.
I think we charged, we got $500 a year, if I remember right. You remember, Bill?
200.
Well, it was 200 for one, then it went to 500.
Yeah.
Related question maybe, does Rome help Belgrade with the maintenance of the Center for All Seasons? It started off to be a Belgrade-Rome project.
I think you can answer that question. I don't think you do.
No, we don't get any funding from the Center for
How
All
about the
Seasons.
food pantry, the Belgrade-Rome food pantry?
I don't know what that is.
There is an agreement that in Rome does fund a portion, but that's a private group now. Remember, the Belgrade-Rome Food Pantry is not part of the town government. It's a private 501c3. They work together with Rome. My understanding is that Rome does provide, I don't know if it's 500 or whatever, and workers for the facility.
I'm thinking of the space and the equipment and the
Well,
electricity bill.
I know exactly what you're thinking about. I went through this when we were looking at the multi-purpose building. In fact, I think at one point in time, we were actually considering that Rome had to leave that group if the pantry was gonna be there. So I can't tell you the financial arrangement between the two entities because it's a 501c3. I think I've heard $500 a year to help support the building, but it's through to the organization itself, not to
And
us.
then just a couple of data points.
I'll make a motion to accept this and authorize it.
I have a question.
Okay.
It says the final report, and there's no date in for the final report.
We have a date of October 1st. I didn't have it in that
Next
draft.
year? Next
Did you-
year,
did you-
October?
Next year,
Yes.
yeah, because we kind of
Yes,
provided
okay.
a date. And that date can be moved if they aren't ready yet. I mean, you guys can authorize a change in date,
Okay.
obviously.
Thank you.
I have a question. Who would be on this committee?
Well, it's the fire, if you, I have to get a copy of it right here. I got it right here someplace, I have it. It says, the fire chiefs are gonna co-chair. All right? The committee will consist of 8 members with equal representation from each town. The fire chiefs are gonna have the flexibility to appoint who they think that they want on the committee. I thought I had that.
The only problem I got seeing with this, you got an even number of people. You need to have an odd number.
Well, what they wanted, again, I'm just saying, what they want is supposed to be by consensus, not vote.
Because it could be a tie, I mean.
Well, they're gonna operate under consensus, not a vote. I can do whatever you want. I mean, this is your approval.
No, if this is just, I guess I can go along, if it's just a
I think it's just
study,
an
I can go
Study
advisory,
committee.
sort of an advisory board, more or less, to try to hammer out some of the details, and then it's actually up to the.
Ultimately, it'll come back to you guys, it'll come back to both towns. and both
Sorry,
towns
I
have
asked
to
a
accept it.
question.
Let's figure it out.
Are there any female firefighters?
Yes.
Thank you.
This,
All right.
they have to be, the people kind of have to be appointed by us.
Yeah, that's what this says.
Once you get in, they'll bring a list.
But they'll bring a list to you.
All right, so you made the motion,
Okay.
so I need a second.
Second.
You moved and seconded. Is there any more discussion? Seeing none,
No.
all in favor? 4 and 1 absent. All right, now we come to the fun part.
Oh, this one. God, we should talk about it.
The next thing on the thing is, wage review update.
Yes. Okay, as you remember, a while back, I was struggling with some questions about wage increases, and we had a fair amount of controversy about this at the last budget preparation. So I asked, and you agreed, you appointed 2 board members to work with me and Howard on looking at wage issues with the impending minimum wage increases and all of that. We prepared, we met in the group of the 2 board members and Howard, the committee, asked me to work out 4 scenarios, which I did. You see them in the attachment. And then this ad hoc committee that you formed wanted to meet with the budget committee to run it past them, and they did. And out of that process came a consensus kind of recommendation to the board. And I think I'm tracking right now. And the consensus recommendation was that we have people who are at $10.50, bring them up to minimum wage, which is $11 on January 1. Everyone else, subject to wage increases, would get a 2.5% increase on January 1 and no performance review increase. That was kind of the sense that the committee thought would be appropriate given the circumstances that we're undergoing in this kind of a turmoil in the labor market with the impending minimum wage increases. So that's the recommendation. I have not done, I got a chart here for that. I just wanted to throw that out to you. Did you want to say anything at all, Howard?
The only other thing that we recommended was that early next year, Denny work on getting a perspective together as to how we are with other towns, because one of the things which was discussed both in the small group meeting and in the larger meeting was the whole issue of recruitment and retention. And, you know, was Belgrade putting themselves at a disadvantage? We don't want to be the Cadillac, but we don't want to be the Yugo. And so we need to get a better handle on what's going on in other towns, and then look at the potential wage scale for the jobs for our town, especially in light of the fact we've got to deal with this whole thing again next year.
And if I can, that's true. And part of, and I'll put that together probably after town meeting. if we get some information. It may be kind of difficult, given that people are, other towns throughout the state are also looking at minimum wage increases. So there may be fluctuations, but we should be able to prepare a wage scale range for each of the positions that is at least meaningful. So we'll do that as well. That was the actual, one of the requests from them.
So you don't have a chat with that?
No, I don't have it, but it's
So it's not one of the.
it's not one of the four. I should have prepared the chart. It's just that it's a lower cost chart than any of these four alternatives except for.
The one that says, up to minimum and 2.5% at review.
Yeah, that's
Has
essentially
a total
what,
figure of 93.69. That's pretty close. It's
yeah,
gonna
it's
be
pretty close.
a few cents more than that because the people who, you know, if there was somebody based on going through this chart who's not up for review until September, then they're gonna be getting it earlier than what they would with that time. But that's gonna be the only fluctuation there. But that number's not way out of whack.
I'll get the chart and I'll send it out to you. I should have had that prepared. Actually, Howard pointed that out tonight. I kind of put this, in my head it was kind of set. I knew what we were going to do and I just didn't do it. I didn't have Melanie do it.
So what's happening tonight? We have to,
No, it was just an update. You don't have to, because
it's gotta go to the budget committee. They're gonna
right,
work it.
well, the budget committee's already looked at it, and that's the recommendation. What's gonna happen now with the budget process is tomorrow night, there's gonna be a preview primarily of all of the special requests that have been made, that's the warrant articles, in any kind of thing that's out of the normal. That's to the budget committee. Remember, the budget committee is an advisory group to the town manager and the board. So they're gonna preview, they're gonna make comments, and we'll address those comments or whatever, and then we're gonna put a preview package of the entire budget with the warrant articles together. We'll probably preview that with the board sometime after the second meeting in October, that third week. I wanna get that done. It'll be a full budget meeting, but it won't be voting. You guys are gonna be looking at the budget, you're gonna be hearing me explain or addressing any questions that you may have based on my understanding at the time. There'll be committee members, department heads here to answer questions, all of that. The reason for that is so that we get a pretty good handle on making sure we've got your questions addressed. Then we go to a full budget meeting with the voting that takes place. We should have addressed most of the questions that you've had in that preview. If we have it, we can address more questions. We'll have time. But that pretty much puts us at a complete budget, hopefully sometime by mid-November, last week of November. Remember, we didn't start even giving a preview until I think it was preview was early December, I think, last year. So this whole process that we set up is meant to push the development of the budget early so we don't get into this feeling that we're constrained, that you're pushed, and we don't have time. And we want to make sure that it's all worked out so we don't have a public meeting where people aren't, or people are arguing about how the process worked. Rather, we have a process now, we're trying to make it work. This is the first year of the process. I think it's going okay so far. It's not perfect. It's not perfect. But I think it's coming along a lot smoother than last year. So that's
You're welcome tomorrow night, though.
And everyone's welcome. These are public meetings.
Geez, I'm a little tied up.
Yeah.
Okay, and there's not any huge requests. There's little requests, but there's not. Other than the fire department.
Just got a text, they could use a mic up there at the meeting tonight, I guess. Must be a lot of people.
Okay, I don't know how I'm gonna get the mic on. I don't wanna call it.
And, whatever.
What's that?
Whatever, but that was a message I got.
Okay, who said it, Bill?
No, Craig.
Craig?
Does anybody know what Jason is?
No, you have to have, there's Jason. Jason, could you do something real quick up there?
I believe so.
Do you know where the equipment is? Because I don't.
I'm getting a little pressure on my Slack right now to get out of here, but I'll run up there and see what happens.
Just put up one speaker and a mic.
Yeah, sure. No problem.
No, we didn't have any understanding of how big that committee meeting would be.
I'm just guessing there must be a lot of people there.
Thank you.
I don't know why they.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Did you have anything, Jason, by the way?
I do not,
Okay.
no, thank you.
Budget committee, it's in the budget committee.
Yeah.
Is Suarez here at Center Paulson?
All right, are we all set on
I'm
that?
gonna call you as soon as I get.
Okay. Let's move on to the warrant.
Alright, so this $300 that's added on here, this is the $300 that we took out from the last one. And what was the explanation on
Well,
that?
there was one thing that she crossed out that wasn't supposed to be, but it wasn't clear that it was supposed to be added, so. She said she'll never do that again, I said.
Okay. Cause there were two.
Yeah, there were two
items
issues,
that
yeah,
needed
yeah.
to
And one was
be-
crossed out that wasn't supposed to be, and then the other one was what you thought.
Alright, so this warrant number is 119 and the total amount is $607,274.92. So that is,
Your second on it?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
who's,
We got discussion?
who's Belgrade Mechanical Service?
It's, what the heck's his name?
The truck he goes around.
Yeah.
I forget his name now. He,
Which one are you looking at?
This Lakemar?
Yeah, he's
kind of a local handy mechanic name.
Was it not
begins with S.
Yeah.
Sam.
I lost.
Stevens?
17832.
Well, it's like that.
Says install a Lakemar at the transfer station.
Yeah,
Geez,
well, it's,
Well, we gave him 580.
it's not great, 43 years old, Remington, apparently, some guy named Remington. Oh, it's Chris Chaveri.
Yeah, that's it. Yes. No.
Tomorrow.
So where's this light bulb?
It says field service later installed 21.25 in LED light bar and wiring harness kit with relay. It doesn't say where. I assume it may be right in the recycling building where you don't need lights anymore.
I guess it's on the skid steer.
Or on the skid steer. That's right, I wasn't even thinking about that.
Well, no, wouldn't that be part of the skid steer total that we have for 2,000 and something?
No, that's a
Back
different
here?
company.
Okay.
So where?
That would be my guess, but I don't know that. That's the only thing that I can see where you'd be putting a light valve.
Yeah, maybe put light.
Okay. Well, glad I asked, because I was like, what is this? Who is
Because
this?
he's got a mechanical, they go around and works on equipment and stuff. It's funny, but go ahead.
Number 17850, training for Anthony. I assume that was,
Prior to his decision,
and I assume we won't be doing that anymore with him.
not with him.
Thank you.
Anybody else got anything? Was the stuff from Jordan Equipment on the skid steer repair, was that regular routine maintenance or from, accidents that have happened or something?
Well, I haven't heard of any accidents that have happened, so I would assume it's routine repair. If there are accidents that you've heard about.
No, I'm just, no.
That's a
I'm
good
just-
amount of money.
I guess, it isn't for a piece of equipment.
What's your check number? Because what I understood, there was a fair amount of work that the equipment is aging.
It's 17,844. Yeah, I mean, it is. And
Here's what he did. Bushing wear, pin, pivot tape,
okay.
bolt, washer, nut, valve, pinch freight.
That's not,
Okay. Let's see what else. Lens, this is all
okay. No, I'm just regular routine repair.
routine.
Yep, that's,
No, I haven't heard anything out of there.
no, I didn't, I was trying to, it wasn't really an accident, it was,
Accident.
no, it's fine.
Okay.
Well,
Routine repair.
I haven't heard.
17840,
Back up.
Generators of Maine that we paid to do a carburetor install. What's that?
For the fire department.
New carburetor for the 6.2 for the fire department. for engine 6.2. 919, install a new carburetor and service pump for 6.2.
It's gotta be for the generator or a pump or something, but wouldn't be for the truck.
Well, it says for 6.2,
It
so.
says for the truck, so that's why I was questioning, I was like, why are we paying generators in Maine to put a carburetor on a fire truck?
Well, maybe that.
New carburetor and service pump for 6.2 for the fire department. I don't know.
Does the truck carry a spare generator?
Might be on the generator, yeah. Yeah, I think it does. You're right.
Yeah, it does. Or the portable pump.
It's not for the engine on the truck, but for the generator.
With the generator outside. The generator outside the unit.
Well, it says 6.2, which is one of the engines.
No, it'd be on the, it'd probably be right on the truck.
On 17,853, the lawyers, Jones Land Use.
Yep. There's an enforcement action we have against a guy that was permitted to put a laundry room,
Okay, that's what.
garage, and a playroom in, and he built a two-story facility that had 3 bathrooms in it, 3 bedrooms, kitchen. So we told him that isn't gonna fly. So right now we're in a consent agreement development, and he's trying to amend his permit. It's not a nice situation going on down there, but if he's allowed to do certain things, that's Gary's call. I can't make the call on that, but he is going to pay a penalty for failure to follow his first permit. And he's going to pay a penalty, not a penalty, he's going to pay legal fees, our legal fees. So that's what the consent agreement says, Rick.
Okay.
And it's an ongoing issue. I'm hoping to get it resolved by the end of this year. We've had 4 or 5 issues down on Sandy Cove Road this year. One penalty and a couple fixes, and with legal fees.
What's the story with the first one there, the gravel pit enforcement?
I asked the lawyer to review the law, whether or not the board had the authority. This is the issue where the board granted permission to do something that they did, and then there was a complaint issued by one of the planning board members, and we investigated whether or not you had the authority. He came back and gave me a decision that, in fact, you didn't really have the authority to do that. So now we're working through that whole thing, recognizing that what was done helped the town in terms of the road, because there was some culverts put in at the expense of the gravel pit operator. The question is, how do we work this out so that both the complainant and the gravel pit operator, we're trying to work this out without any further impact. So,
Okay.
I think we can, but that's just where we're at right now.
Which gravel pit was it?
This is the one across from the Belgrade Central School.
Oh, yes.
There was a requirement to keep a 50-foot setback, from the road, keep the thing there, so they removed the gravel. With authority granted, so you can't really. Yeah. So now it's just a difficult issue of bringing this together to conclusion so that both sides are satisfied.
I don't think that's what we thought we signed, I can tell you.
Well, that's what it says.
I know what it says.
I didn't write the letter.
I know, and I know, but anyway. Let's move, anybody else got anything? Seeing none, I would entertain a vote, all in favor? 5. Thank you. Now we are going to move to town manager.
I'm going to try to be real quick because I really want to get down to the meeting. I talked to Rob Duplessis about the abatement and supplement that we had questions about last week. He asked me to withdraw, not to put it on the agenda this week. He's going to write up an explanation. And he also, I talked to him about coming to the meetings when there were supplements and or abatements. He said, well, that's not in my contract, but let me see what I can figure out and what we can work out. So I'll be discussing that. Guido's Way, there was a question about the naming of Guido's Way, and whether or not there was a policy that addressed those types of names. Talked to Gary, who's our addressing officer. He said he doesn't remember a policy, but we do have an addressing ordinance. The ordinance doesn't restrict the naming of the way. What it says is similar names. No two roads shall be given the same or similar sounding names such as Beach and Peach, Pine Road and Pine Lane, etc. And then every effort should be made that each street slash road shall have the same name throughout its entire length. So that's the only thing it's specified. So there's that. Streetlight committee, the committee has met, and we've actually had some good discussions, I think. Jack has done a lot of work in going out and trying to locate all of our streetlights. He's found some, and he's brought up some good points about, no, there's some lights out there that we may not need, you know, like down on Station Road or wherever. So, and then there was a question about a pilot. I don't think we're going to get this ready for this year. I don't think it's possible. We may be able to do a pilot this year, because the cost of a pilot is going to be about $1,000 to $1,200, roughly speaking. But there is a group of towns that are going to meet next Thursday, a week from this Thursday, and they're going to be talking with Revision Energy, not Revision Energy.
Yeah, Revision Energy.
No, it's not Revision Energy. It's Realterm. Realterm, something or other. Realterm is what it says. And there is a Revision Energy, but and these folks, they're going to talk to them about if the 5 towns got together, is there a possible savings and all of that. And so I'm going to go to that meeting. I've asked any of the people on the LED committee that if they want to go, they can. It's in, what can't I remember? Randolph Town Office at 4 o'clock on the 10th.
On the 10th, right, Wednesday.
Is it 10th Wednesday? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, it is, yeah, because the 3rd is. So, I'm going to go there to see what I can learn, and more, and bring that back. And what I'm going to also try to do is geolocate and do we're having a map of the roads developed by the Belgrade Conservation Corps. They had a GIS person, and we've got that developed, and I want to get an overlay of all of the streetlights in their locations so we have a permanent fix on where they're at. But that'll be an ongoing task. It's not something that's going to be done like that. So just to let you know. So anyhow, that's where we're at. Once I go to this committee meeting, I'll talk again to the board. We're trying to, to the subcommittee, we're trying to locate 2 places where we might want to put lights. One I thought would be in downtown Belgrade, right next to Dick Tripp's house, because he's really impacted potentially by those lights. And then another one someplace else, and Jack, you referenced something on perhaps 8 and 11. So that's to be decided, and what type of light. There's recommendations for that too, but it's too early to put that all out there. That's the update on streetlights. So it won't be a streetlight warrant article this year, I'm pretty sure. The Community Television Association of Maine is looking to put new legislation forward to kind of cramp down on Charter, which is the major cable company in the state, but to clamp down on the Charter's kind of authority to do certain things that they're doing, including kind of changing where PEG channels go. PEG channels are public educational and governmental access channels. So that's going on, and I've looked at the legislation and all that. I'll be following it rather closely, but I think it's really targeted so that these ongoing increases that I think I forwarded you this particular one, Charter's increasing by $1 a number of
Because they're doing such a great job getting back to people.
Yeah. So
can I interrupt you just for a second? On your key that you sent up to the Senate, is there a key to the closet where the PA might be kept?
It should be one of those keys. Should be a key for the entire facility.
Okay.
I don't know which one because
he said the places.
Don't read directly.
I won't read what it says, but.
Well, how do we know? I mean,
I know. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I did.
What's the guy's name that's got the key?
It's Dick Green. Dick Green. I'll be going up here shortly. So anyhow, and then there's another effort at the federal level that is looking at reducing or doing away with franchise fees. Okay, so I haven't read through this. I've kind of skimmed the first few kind of explanatory pages, but that's something we'll be keeping a watch on, and something that CTAM. So
What is CTAM?
the Community Television Association of Maine. Talk about that. Wings Mills Dam, that's what's being discussed at the Center for All Seasons with a group of people that apparently aren't happy with the Dams Committee. Bar Harbor Bank, the update will take place on October 16th. Just as a heads up, that's all been I just wanted to let you know. And I mentioned the budget preview. And I'll be taking vacation from November 9th to November 13th. That's a Friday to a Tuesday, I think. But that's a month out. More to come on that. That's all I have.
Okay, does anybody else have anything that they wanna add to the?
Run down to the lines.
I've got one thing we need to probably be thinking about. As I was talking to Gary today, I happened to see the Warren boys too. We may need a way to load sand.
I know.
So we may be wanting to think about what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
Just to throw it out there, so it's gonna be, you may wanna add something in the budget for,
So what do we mean?
like,
Well, Gary can operate a loader. I think that's where you.
yeah, that's where I'm,
Gary can operate a loader. Currently, Les, who's his assistant, cannot operate a loader. Kenny can. We don't have any idea who's going to apply. That job position has been advertised. We don't know any idea of who's going to get that position. So I think what you're talking about is perhaps putting sufficient
or something in there.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I mean, the Warren boys, like, they let Scott run it.
Yeah.
They let
Gary
run it
They're not
because they
going to let
know,
anyone run it.
they know they can run a loader, but they're not just gonna let everybody
That's right.
run that. So it's either that or we
It's another
sand
spin-off.
back over to the transfer station like we did one other time. We used to have a pile over there.
And then the skid steer.
And then the skids, but it's a pain because you gotta go up and get it out of the other building, and it's just not an easy fix. And the other thing, where we use salt on these buildings, they're not gonna have the access to the salt lick thing.
Yeah, that is an easy access.
Right, they'd have to wait till somebody's up there, but.
Yeah,
just-
and you use about a load and a half, so you'd have to load the salt. And whoever got the
You
position.
kinda gotta pre-plan ahead a little bit.
Yeah, I know. I'm thinking about that.
This is just something I want to throw, so I don't get shocked that. Yeah, put something else in there.
Well, this is what happens when you
Yeah.
get, shocks like this.
But anyways, it's just a food for thought. I'd entertain a motion, I guess, to adjourn.
I move for adjournment.
All right, so we have a second? Then moved in second, all in favor? Thank you guys very much.
No, let's stay and talk for a minute.
No. Well, yeah, let's stay and talk because I don't want to go down to the line.
I'm debating whatever what the guy said.
So the girls are back texting me, they're supposed to be flying to London tomorrow.
Oh, geez, what happened?
And the airline that they're flying on just came back.
What?
Premier Air, so
What is
no
it?
reason, Premier Air. No, so
It's part of the possibly involved.
they were coming back on Sunday, and Ryanair was who they were flying back with.
I've been going, I've actually taken some pictures of the poles.
That's a 2 days.
The numbers like.
Found an hour, but now
Yeah, I know,
they're gonna
yeah. I can ask them.
go to Iceland.